Thank you, everyone. Again, a round of applause for our panel, including the Darren Williams. Thank you so much for joining us. Darren, we are honoured to have you here.
Oh, slightly embarrassing.
I'm so pleased to have you here with us today because obviously we touched a little bit on in the panel previously, but quite often with these events is that you get people talking from the equipment supply side and they talk amongst themselves, and there are big challenges facing each other. But actually, I think sometimes it's better to actually hear from the end users themselves, the guys that are actually in the field using the equipment, and finding out what you guys are learning when you're actually out on site. So thank you very much for joining me. I just think, again, as we did in the last panel, if you could all introduce yourselves. I'll start with you, Stephanie, and then just give a little bit of overview for your audience exactly what your roles are and which company you represent.
Stephanie Tannous from Graco High Level Access Specialist. I am project lead in the company.
Great.
Julian Khalil, Senior Director for Soft Services in Farnic. I'm overlooking the cleaning division and with that also the high level teams.
And Darren Williams, the Head of High Level Access from Emerald Services Facilities Management.
How much do you pay them to do that? I think one of the interesting things for me would be just, so if you could just explain how you as an organisation deploy yourselves and mobilise yourselves on site, what your sort of process is really, just to give an indication about how this works. Stephanie, if I could start with you.
First of all, we do the survey.
Yeah.
We go and explore the site. We understand the site before mobilizing. And then after the survey, we put our first plan, first schedules for the teams, for the machines, to know what machine to lease, what type of machines, what's the requirement of the clients.
And how sort of soon, how far before you're actually on site does this all take place? Is this the night before or sort of a month before?
Like 1 month is enough for us. We can mobilize in a short period because we have, we are a big company. I'm talking about our Graco. We are a big company, so we have the number of staff. We can mobilize within a short period. But for us to be able to deliver for the client and to meet his requirement and what's best for the site, of course we need prior notice to be able to be ready with all the staff, materials, machines.
Great. And Julian, is this something, I'm sure lots of people are aware of Farnic as an organisation now. You see the vans everywhere.
That's good.
Bright orange. But how do you guys, is this the same approach that you take? Is there, I mean, obviously, I guess you have ongoing contracts that you need to, clients that you need to service.
I think the mobilization for all the FM companies is quite similar. It's pretty much also determined from the time frames the client has in mind. So I would say that 30 days is somehow most of the clients what they're looking for to transition from old to new.
Why 30 days? Was it just an industry habit, or is it?
I think somehow it's often budget driven to accelerate the process. More, I think better would be definitely looking from a quality perspective and as a 3 months period. And we're talking also quite about huge projects. Where transitions are not just, about throwing everybody out and then the next team in.
Darren, I guess 30 days for you as well, I guess, is it?
30 days is sort of the norm that we all try and look at, but it starts a lot more before that. You've got to understand the contract that you go into before the mobilization, that client interaction, your own team development for mobilization. We operate our own center of excellence so that we keep people ready for doing that sort of thing. But it's all well and good, as Stephanie alluded to, we've got to go to site, conduct these services, work with the rental organizations here, work with our stakeholders. Will they actually allow, and we touched on sustainability there, a diesel machine on site, or do we have to use electrification? Unfortunately, the facility that we're going to take over may have actually only been designed to utilize a diesel machine.
Really? Even though we're talking often about interiors, often?
Yeah, because there is no parking or infrastructure support to then charge and leave that machine in the facility. Because if you then have to take an electric machine away to charge it every night, invariably you're sticking it on the back of a diesel-driven transporter.
Yeah, it sort of defeats the object, doesn't it?
The object. So it's all about pre-mobilization, that the dialogue, the communication with your client and the rental organizations as well as your own organization.
I mean, and does it depend on what sort of project you're working on? I mean, I'm asking an obvious question. Obviously, depending on what sort of project we're working on, or what sort of contracts it is, the machine will be different. I mean, obviously, I know some of you guys have worked on the Expo. I mean, I know we're all under NDAs. We can't really discuss very much about that. But I guess all the time, sort of, how aware of you of what your options are in terms of machinery and equipment? You know, when you get sort of something different comes along, do you think, oh gosh, we're going to need a different sort of machine, different training?
Well, it's not just the machine. I think what you've got to look at is a completely blended approach.
Yeah.
The machine is just one method of conducting that facilities management.
Yeah.
Like Greco, they use rope access.
Yeah.
We have our own rope access division, all IRATA are approved and certified as well. So, I mean,
just to say, I mean, I have full respect for these guys that do the rope access. Years ago, I actually spent some time with the owner of your thing with the Gecko guys.
Yes.
Scary. I don't know how these guys do it. It's just crazy. But I mean, the interesting thing there is it's not just about the equipment, it's about the safety as well. So there's a whole big discussion going on, isn't there? I mean, I'm surprised when you say 30 days. I don't know how you have time to do it all to get ready to go.
Yeah. So that's 30 days, though. It is having the infrastructure and the ability within your organization to support it by ensuring that your technicians, your operators, your support and management do not have the skill fade as well, because it's all well and good having trained operators, but if they haven't operated, say, a spider lift for 6 months or 3 months since the last job they were on, then they are not only a danger to themselves, but to the asset that you're working on. So it's an integral part of what we do to ensure that our continued education of the operators, and it actually protects the rental agencies that we work with, their asset as well, because the last thing we want to do is put an operator in a piece of plant without actually having
I'm sure they find that reassuring.
Well, no,
it's true, isn't it? It's a very serious point.
It is, but the rental agencies and they have a part to play, I believe, with this, is ensuring that the companies that rent the equipment off them, as you would rent a car from Hertz, for example, ensure that whoever's going to operate it is qualified themselves.
I mean, how easy is it to access that training for your guys, for your operators? I mean, obviously you operate. I know you guys obviously do your own in-house training as well. But how easy to access outside training and help in this market?
Every operator should have an IPAF training, and there is a lot of companies in the UAE that they do the IPAF training, and we do as well refreshing training, familiarization training, because some machines are different than the others. So even if this operator is, let's say, 3A, 3B certified, maybe he was not trained on this machine. So every time we're on site, before starting the job, before moving to the site, we need to do a familiarization for this operator to be able to understand the machine and to avoid any issues or problem that may happen in the site and disappoint the client.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Julian, is this a sort of similar approach that you take? Is there a distinction?
I think obviously IPAF is one of the main things for all MUPS operators, and then as Stephanie said, it's really the specific machine where it comes down to. Even if an operator is certified, for a few machines. We have ever-changing projects, environments. And I think on-site, the supervision and the support for the team members, just knowing that, I mean, everybody, Darren developed Expo concept and Stephanie is working on it, we are working on it all together.
Yeah.
So Expo is, for example, a very complex site where, for example, just maneuvering the machines around the districts is a very complex task, right? And needs experience, and it's not just to have a certificate, but just to do this also daily again in order to get comfortable with it.
Just also as well, I guess you guys play a very important role in terms of keeping the costs for the actual building owners or the site owners. You guys are doing that, so there's your own efficiency, but obviously you're part of what you're delivering, I guess, is this idea of actually like their buildings are lasting longer, they're safer to actually use, they're better quality buildings or sites for the actual users themselves. I mean, is there any kind of, what process do you go through in terms of when you're thinking maybe about the machine and then making sure that, you know, putting a machine on site or putting people on site that use machines and making sure that there's minimal disruption to everybody around? How do you go about doing that? Because that must be quite an important part of your daily lives.
So when it comes to estimation about what equipment to use, how many team members, what's the frequency, I think, I mean, all of our organizations have quite a long experience, and we have our experts to pretty much accurately estimate how long a panel or part of a building is needs to be cleaned. But then again, I think a lot is about the access around the building. Do you come from top? Do you come from down? And and then the availability of the equipment, and as Darren mentioned, I think in Expo specifically, it's about how to move an equipment a few hundred meters every day with trucks around, and as part of that, a lot of constraints in terms of time management. And we should not forget that most of the high level...
time must be one of the big constraints for you guys, surely.
Absolutely, because most of the high level cleaning has to take place out of operating hours of the site. If this is a mall, if this is an event site, outdoor, maybe except commercial and residential buildings.
I think one of the things as well with the assisting our clients there and our stakeholders is these technicians doing the work are more than just cleaners, and this is where we have the value added of these guys are accessing locations, be it on the facade of a building or internal in void spaces, in vents and duct spaces and things like that, where with the correct training and education, you can actually give these guys become also almost forensic in the way they can analyze the degradation of a building, and but then that's what you've then got to over the period of a time in a contract actually deliver to your client. You can actually see degradation. You may be complying with what an O&M requirement was, but that was on a building maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So actually providing that input and support to the clients as well.
So it must be an ongoing process. You must be
completely iterative.
You can't just sort of just expect yourselves to sort of get a 5-year, 10-year contract and just carry on. You have to continue, and I guess that affects the types of equipment that you can use or how you're using them as well.
And I think in the last panel, Rob was saying, it may not necessarily be a weekly change, but maybe a monthly or yearly, the changes do occur. And that's even within the footprint of a building that we may be working with or on a project. You've rented a machine or you've purchased a particular machine for a project, and then all of a sudden, the architects, the landscapers, the events people have come in, and suddenly you drive in one day and there's a fountain there. And your machine is no longer applicable to that role, and but you've still got to make it happen. So you work with your rental partners.
That's happened, doesn't it, Darren?
Yes.
That sounds like that's happened.
I couldn't possibly comment.
I mean, I guess one of the things I always think about when I think about facilities management is that how early it should be considered in the construction process. I mean, it just seems like sometimes, you've touched upon it there, is that you've got the architects, you've got consultants, you've got the contractors on site and everything. Are you involved early enough in this? I mean, obviously, when I think about construction, obviously, you always think about the machines that are used for the construction. So with facilities management, you're going to be using equipment on site. You're going to be probably on that site for longer than the people that were building there. So, I mean, in this market, are you involved early enough in this in terms of the planning for a new building or a new site? Has it got better?
I can't speak for Julian or Fire, but there are organisations and consultancies out there. We have our own in-house team that sometimes get involved at that stage of the architectural design. I've been fortunate enough to be involved in the access strategy design with the architects. What happens though, what was on paper and what ends up getting built through the construction process, the capex cost of construction comes down, and it's left to ourselves as the facilities service deliverer to work a solution that need not have been there in the first place.
Value engineering is something that we've seen sort of in the market recently, become much more important over the last 10 years. And that is a process of taking costs out of the construction of a project. But I guess when you look at the operational side of a building or a site, this is where you guys step in, that they've cut costs, and obviously that puts challenges for you guys in terms of your own kind of role, I guess, in terms of the building. But also you can actually come back and actually also again deliver some cost savings and a quality savings. Is that?
I mean, I would just say to that, cutting costs during construction maybe, is sometimes obviously happening and then it affects our operations. On the other hand, I think especially here in the UAE, we have quite stunning facade structures. And
I mean, they're the best in the world, aren't they, really? I mean, absolutely, you're right, stunning.
Yeah, and I think this is actually more operationally difficult sometimes to figure out because the architects or designers did not necessarily consider it.
Have you ever looked at a building that you're looking at, you might be working on, and thought, how are we ever going to do this? Does that happen?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, sorry. I mean, how often does that happen?
I think there's a solution for everything, especially with rope access. The guys in rope access have quite a lot of different ways how to reach almost every point.
Is that true?
Yeah, it is true because there is always a way, but yes, you can find a place that you will look at. It cannot be done by rope access. The roof is not ready for the rope. Cannot be done by rope access. There is no access for the machine. What should I do? Maybe the scaffolding will not be able to reach, but there is always a way. You can have a bigger machine, so it will extend more, and you can reach. But there is a lot of these buildings that you can find.
Julian, how do you? So what when you've got a challenging facade, let's say, how does Farnec sort of approach that sort of challenge?
Well, it depends. So we ourselves, we have mainly cradles and boom lift operators. So for us, often the challenges which we are facing, as usually either there's a monorail system or a BMU installed already, has then to do with the actual cleaning process, or if then yet a cradle cannot reach each and every corner, where we then go to partners like Graco, for example, and see if we can include rope access to reach specific points.
I see. So I didn't know you guys. So you guys often collaborate.
Of course, of course we do. And otherwise, I think for us, the process itself from cleaning, I give an example. One of our clients just recently installed a lot of new facade lights, and the request came, we cannot clean with water anymore. first question came to our mind, but what happens if it rains? I'm sure they're waterproof, right? But then these are the things where we quickly have to look on how to adapt the cleaning process, if this impacts again on the duration and potentially the cost.
That's crazy, by the way. Darren, are you often facing the insurmountable, the impossible?
Like Stephanie said, the impossible is always possible if you think about it. It's a case of saying yes and we'll work it out. And that's what we generally do. But one thing I think, as Julian just touched on there, we're talking about access and handling, and we're looking on the MEWP side of it as one side of it. But there's the top-down approach as well, which is, no one's really touched on today, is the building maintenance units, the infrastructure that's built in as part of the strategy when these buildings are designed. And sometimes you actually need to go back to basics when we're working on this. Whoever designed that building, as part of their design process, did have a thought or a design strategy of how it was going to be maintained. Sometimes it does take a bit of...
It's like a puzzle, is it?
You have to try and unravel historical research in finding that documentation. Or actually go into the architects and the design teams and say, what was the plan to start with? Because sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. That wheel is already there. We just need to rearrange the spokes slightly to actually do the job. And that is the sustainable way of doing it as well. Do not overcomplicate it sometimes. And I think that's somewhat sometimes a bit of the problem. We try to overcomplicate what is sometimes a simple solution.
So always the best solution is the simplest one. I mean, how helpful is the equipment sector? I mean, obviously there's some members here in terms of helping out this, when you've got this puzzle to solve, how helpful do you, in your experience of the equipment sector, are they helpful enough?
For want of upsetting anyone, we'll deal closely, and I've personally dealt closely with a number of the rental companies, and and that is part of that communication to get it done. They've got technologies now that can assist us really well. Like we've utilized virtual reality training, where you can scan the facade, the BIM model of a facade, and give an operator a machine type with his VR goggles on to actually practice, go into an area.
You actually do that? I've seen this stuff on press releases.
So, and that's what we, and there's more and more of that ability as well. So, utilizing the technology to improve the safety as well. That is, and we can only do that with working with our partners. And with the rental organisations that are there.
I mean, is this something, working with your partners, is that something you guys try to do? Try and perhaps with some of the guys in this room today? Or not?
Of course. Any new technology, anything new to the market, we will try it. We will try our best to make the safety our priority. To access the building, not only the safety for the site or the safety for the building or the safety for our operators.
I mean, is safety always the priority? Is that when you look at, I mean, I'm sure cost is quite important, but you know, how important is safety for you as organisations? Is it?
It's up there. It's the top.
Number one.
Must be for you,
And we're the same with rope access. At Emerald, we're over 42 million man-hours safe as a company. But that doesn't mean that we stop thinking about safety today because we've achieved a good number. It's our priority for all of us. We all want to go home from work at the end of the day and ensure the same for all of our employees.
I'm sure.
And when you look at the sustainability, at the SDG, for example, the people, the profit, and the planet, the people sit at the top. That's where the sustainability objective is. The sustainability is in what we do for each other, not just where we can save on diesel fuels and things like that.
I mean, my final question was, like we will do for the rest of the panels, was actually talk about the year of sustainability, which leads in quite nicely into that. I mean, Julian, I don't know if you have a comment really about what the FM sector itself can do to help the UAE this year in terms of achieving its ambitions for the year of sustainability. I mean, obviously we can talk about switching from diesel to electric equipment, but obviously there's other processes, practices we can employ, aren't there?
I mean, electric vehicles or so is a big topic.
Yeah.
It does not just apply to the MUPs, it does apply to the entire logistic fleet. For example, in Farnic, where we're also looking at hybrids and electric vehicles and see how we can roll this out to over almost 300 buses and transport vehicles. The other thing is, I think, which in line with the carbon neutrality target from the UAE, is it was really like a wake-up call for a lot of companies, client service providers, manufacturers to look very specific how to continue here in this market and adapt this.
So you must be re-engaging with your suppliers to actually sort of see what...
In all ways, and also with the clients. So, for example, resource conservation plans, water saving, energy saving, etc. is a big topic. It's just, again, like in the Q1 this year, on so many different sites and levels, we are discussing this. It's often still not yet clear how to implement it, because clients can contradict themselves. They want to save water, but then they want it clean, you know. So and sometimes
how do you sort of grab them and put them in facing the right direction in that situation? Is that,
usually, I think it's no. You try. I mean, you put a plan together. You start working on it, and then whilst working in it, you adapt it. I mean, Stephanie knows this from Expo side. If you have a fixed plan and frequencies everywhere, you will find out by time that certain sites can be adapted. Either you have to increase it or to reduce it, and
so flexibility is always an asset.
Of course.
When it comes to dealing with clients.
Further to that, on the utilization, the utilization of the water aspect. With technologies such as pure water systems, utilizing reverse osmosis cleaning systems, but also feeding in. So if you look at a number of the buildings have solar now, loads of solar systems, but from an FM point of view, monitoring that solar generation and altering the cleaning frequencies to meet the generation requirement as well. It's one that you get a few microns over the panel in certain areas, and you've actually not even generating what you were designed to. So, and unfortunately, they put the solar panels in the desert.
Exactly. And it's not very practical, and sometimes they're not in very practical places, are they? Either as well. They're on tops of buildings that you weren't necessarily planned for, and things like that. And,
and that's where we work with the end user on that with technology monitoring for solar, for example, with the generation and what you're feeding back into the DEWA grid is. So there's actually a return on the investment. And I guess there's also your own,
but also as well, as companies, you're employing lots of people. So there's that element as well, as actually making sure that you're getting around efficiently as possible, which is what you were suggesting, Julian, which is with the electric hybrid buses or whatever. You actually need to. So it's helping the clients sort of reduce their kind of environmental impact, and it's also reducing yours as well.
Of course, and again, part of the whole carbon neutral strategy is to build a roadmap. This includes, as an organization, to look at all aspects. In cleaning itself, it would be usually mainly the logistic costs, which impact not necessarily the on-site operation. I mean, the panel before, I think, Darren, you mentioned also, it was the panel before that MUPs are only short time on, operating, and once they're up, then they can be switched off and all. So I think these things have less impact there on the environment.
We're just about to run out of time, but just one more question, Stefan. You all mentioned that you're involved in Expo. I just don't know if it was such an important event here, but I mean, what lessons did you guys learn from this particularly huge event very demanding. I mean, obviously you talk about difficulties getting around the site, but actually were there any other lessons that we learned from the UAE hosting this mega event last year? Darren, I don't see you.
Well, I think I touched on it earlier on that the impossible is possible.
Yeah.
And
solution, not problems.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's a solution, not a problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you have always problems. You will face the speed of changes that happened in the Expo.
Yeah.
So this was like what we based our work on, because we're working with Darren. So provide solution, not problems.
Yeah.
The problem's here, provide the solution now. There is nothing impossible. Yes, there is always opportunities. We can work on it.
So do you all do problem solving at home? You're always doing crosswords, all sorts of things. Thank you for that. I don't know if there's any questions from our audience. We have a hand. We have 2 hands, 3 hands. Lots of hands. Good. We like to see hands. If we go to our gentleman at the front there.
Thank you very much. Interesting. What would be your first choice, a cradle or AWP? Of course, there are certain areas you have to select one of them, but if it's possible for both. Using a cradle or a boom, a machine.
A machine.
It depends on the building, first of all. It depends on...
No, of course, I know. There are certain areas, it's only one of them. Yes. It's important for me.
For me, I believe a MUP is faster, you can manipulate, you can maneuver the MUP better than the cradle. I don't know.
Wouldn't you be, would you worry about the price? Because a cradle is, and the machine is...
Yeah, it depends on the cost that your company is providing for this site. There is a lot of criteria, but for me, operationally, what I'm saying, operationally, I believe MUP is better.
Yeah, again, every building does have its own challenge, but if you're looking at a relatively low rise, so up to 40, 50 meters, where it's accessible with a conventional MUP without bespoke design versus the cradle, you're not utilizing that MUP 100% of the time. You bring it in to do the job, and then it's off-hired. The BMU is part of the asset of the structure. It's got its maintenance, its life cycle, its PPMs that go with it. The operators and trainers typically are tied to a BMU type, so with the different manufacturers, with their own nuances and training. The IPAF training, gives all the fundamentals and basics for a MUP operator to operate a type of MUP with just a bit of familiarization there. Where if you look at the building maintenance unit, it does at times require a lot more support to it. And when you look at the safety aspects as well, the safety application, say a MUP operator gets in a position of danger, stuck in an elevated position, the lower in the rescue is I won't say it's simple, but it is easier and trained rather than someone suspended high up in a cradle that will potentially need a technical rescue, be it a rope access team or a DCD recovery team. So there are a lot of, but then if you're looking at maintenance on a building, facade replacement, glass replacement, ACPs, for example, then the BMU does come into its own then because of its greater lift load, its platform area, its surface area as well. So it is a blended approach, and this is where it comes to the dialogue and communication.
How often do you manage to get somebody from a supplier actually on site in that process of actually preparing to go on site? Do they come on board to have a look? I mean, they could be part of that conversation, can't they? Decide if it's what will be the best option for this particular problem.
It is something at Emerald, that's something we do. We have good relationships with a number of the rental companies and also with some of the architectural companies as well when it comes to the design and build projects. So it is a long-term relationship that we have.
You need to be able to sort of, the better dialogue you have, the better relationship you have, the easier that will
communication is always the key.
Yeah.
Rob, I saw you got a microphone there.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask, I mean, obviously safety was mentioned again, and I know that FM has a lot of time pressure. You guys mentioned that, and that can often come at the cost of safety, you know, and balancing that. Darren mentioned refresher training. So how aware are you guys of what your partners can offer you in that area? For example, a rental company, you know, we have VR training that can be used for refresher training, and it doesn't take the same amount of time, and it can even provide a test platform for your employees for you to understand their level of competence or retention. Maybe they need retraining or refresher training, like Darren mentioned. And I'm wondering also, are you into BIM, you know, as well, building information modelling and other things a bit more detailed? Do you have a problem with noise when you're doing your work? It's all after hours. A few questions there, but maybe just you could answer a couple of them.
Yeah, from my side, so over with training, it depends how good you informed us. With the VR training, it's good to know, Rob. In general, I think, as from the previous part, so the whole site visit and all this is actually part of the whole planning, and then determining what training is required based on what machines, access equipment, and etc. But overall, trainings are from our side done internally. We have certified trainers. Obviously, a third party is a requirement, especially when it comes to MUPs and all. And I think from the supplier side, I believe such initiatives as you just mentioned, like with VR and Refresher, more collaboration definitely would be welcomed. Yeah? Because looking at the speed, as you mentioned, the pressure, it takes quite a time for a cleaning technician to reach to the state to be as productive as planned in order to achieve the targets. It's nothing learned in, let's say, a few lessons, a couple of hours practice and all that. Yeah. What was the other part of the question?
Just, do you use building information modeling as part of your planning? You talked about planning and earlier on and stuff like that.
Yeah, obviously if it's available with the clients and all that, so there's a lot of integration looked at the moment from our CAFM systems with BIM. So I would still say that at this stage it's often still that facilities management companies being called in too late. Often, usually, just once the project is, planned to be launched in the next 6 months to 1 year, then the tender comes out, and suddenly all the questions come up because experts come in and say, "Hey, how do you access this? How do you reach there? What do you do there?" So I think whatever it requires in terms of just an early involvement from consultants, specialists, it would be really helpful for the buildings and the construction companies to engage earlier. Yeah.
And of course, actually, I suppose a lot of the buildings you'll be doing won't just be new buildings. They might not have ever had BIM modelling done. Yeah. So, again, but I guess with those sorts of buildings, there'd already be awareness where the access is, and you'd hope that you'd be able to get on site safely, hopefully. Rob, any more questions?
Yeah, thanks. Unless anyone's interested in sustainability comment or environment, how do you guys consider and look at and purchase, I know you do more than cleaning, in your cleaning products, sustainable cleaning products and environmentally friendly, is that part of what you do with your suppliers or not?
Well, I can answer on behalf of Emerald only that what we do is we've learned from projects such as Expo as well with the RISE documentation using environmentally friendly materials, cleaning products, biodegradable. When it comes to the machines, utilization of hybrid biofuels if we can. But again, it goes down to the client. As a company, we use the biodegradable cleaning chemicals, But when it comes to the utilization of machine and equipment, that sometimes is taken out of our hands and is a further dialogue. Maybe not initially with a client as well. It comes down to the further education process. They see the benefits. When you start feeding in your metrics of how much diesel you're using, what your carbon outtake is. I was fortunate enough with the team I had previously that we used telemetrics for monitoring the machine usage. So it's all well and good that the machine operator goes up and is meant to turn the machine off when he's working in that position.
But suddenly you find out when you do that sort of technology, you can see if they're leaving it running.
You could never believe there was 26 hours in a day with the running of the machine. It's because of the engines were literally just running. And that, again, that's part of that education process.
Sure. Sure.
And I want to add one thing regarding the sustainability year and what we've done with Manlift and Expo. Because in Expo there is this requirement the machine cannot be driven on the concourse if there is no tire covers and all the tire marks and the additional maybe cleaning that is required for the concourses, for the floor, for anything. So we came to this agreement to change the tire cover to non-marking tires, which helps the low level, the soft surfaces, less cleaning, less material. So there is always a way to find what's better for the client, for the supplier, and for
everyone. You need to have that dialogue, don't you? Everybody needs to be talking to each other, don't they? Any more questions?
If I can just ask Darren, one more question. You mentioned that remarkable statistic, 42 million safe hours. What's your next goal? Simply to sustain that, make it 60 million? How do you improve on that? What's next?
There is, ultimately, it's the safety goal. We're just continuing in an upwards direction. You do not want to take that step back. And it doesn't matter whether we're sat in here today in a safe environment or I've got guys out there on site now hanging 200 meters up on a building. My objective every day is for every one of those to go home safely and all our employees to go home safely and have that family time. So there is no objective number, there is no target to work to. We just keep going in a safe manner all the way through and doing the best we can to ensure that complies. And that's with not just ourselves, but with our clients as well, because they have to contribute to the safety of those individuals, be that the welfare facilities, the provision of water, rest areas. We're coming into the summer working. We'll look at refining the policies. And sat here today with my peers and you guys here, we're all learning every day and we look at those safe objectives. I see some out there with the anti-crush devices for the machines and things like that. It's all these initiatives that we can look and take on board to help that number grow.
Great.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
It's the money.
Absolutely. I think that was a fabulous conversation. I want to thank our panelists. We are a little bit behind, but thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.